Welcome to yet another transfer tips video ahead of Gameweek 24 in FPL. We're going to be highlighting 3 players to buy, hold, sell and avoid. 3 for each category, so let's get straight into the video. I want to preface this video by saying thank you to everyone who's been subscribing to the channel. We're almost at 10,000, so any of you who haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please consider doing so, and also smashing the like button, commenting down below. It all helps with the algorithm, so thank you very much. And also, this video is being recorded on the 31st of January, so if there are any difference in prices compared to when the video is actually released, then you know why. So the first buy of this video is Kevin De Bruyne. Now, the same could be said of Bruno Fernandes, who I'll talk about later on, but I think De Bruyne, with those fixtures coming up, especially the next two, he's a great purchase. He's shown some consistency, a bit similar to Laporte in defence for Manchester City. He's got good stats across the board. They're improving as he's getting more minutes and he's more nailed in that City team. At the beginning of the campaign, he wasn't really getting those minutes and he wasn't starting as much, so I never really considered him or thought he was worth it. But over the last 4 or 5 game weeks, I think he has proven himself, and we all know Kevin De Bruyne's quality. When he's on it, he's arguably the best player in the league, if not the second best. So he's a great player, a great FPL asset when he's on it, and right now he is. And you could arguably go for him over Foden, maybe have Kevin De Bruyne and Salah, although that is very expensive. That's over 24 million, up to 25 million for those 2 players combined, but I still think he's worth it. And as much as I like Foden and the City defence, if you are looking for a triple up, Kevin De Bruyne might be the one you want to get. The shot volume is quite impressive with 44 shots overall. On target, not that impressive of only 14, 21 shots inside the box though, and his XG and XA stats are pretty decent considering some limited minutes across the season. He's only had 1 big chance though, which actually is quite grim reading, but he has created 8 big chances, which is no surprise, and the more minutes he's going to get, the more big chances he's going to create. As simple as that. 41 key passes, so we all know he's the best playmaker in the world, if not the second best, and I think Kevin De Bruyne is worth getting. But at the same time, there's Heung-min Son. If he's available in Gameweek 24, he's another one to consider. Bruno Fernandes, Mohamed Salah, and also Harry Kane. So it's not as simple as you have to get Kevin De Bruyne, but I think if you are looking for a City player, especially in attack, it has to be Kevin De Bruyne. The next player we're talking about is Edouard, and he actually featured in the best wildcard team video if you haven't already checked that out. And his stats across the season are pretty decent. We have to consider the fact that he's only around 6.5 million and 35 shots overall, 15 on target, so a bit similar to De Bruyne in terms of shots volume, although the amount of shots he's had is actually fewer despite having more minutes and more starts. Now, XG and XA, they're pretty decent. I like the XG over 6, and he's had 11 big chances, so he is definitely the focal point of the Eagles' attack. He has created 1 big chance himself. In terms of creativity though, even though the stats aren't anything amazing, he has registered 4 assists and he has 6 goals, so I think he is worth it. That upcoming fixture against Norwich is looking pretty good, although the Canaries have improved recently, and the fixtures in general for a long period of time are pretty decent. So if you aren't going for Conor Gallagher or maybe Michael Olise, I think Edouard is probably the best one to go for. And from Crystal Palace, I think it's as simple as Gallagher and also Edouard. They're the 2 best assets from Palace. Pick one and stick to them, and I think Edouard might just be the best budget striker at this moment in time. Next up is Andy Robertson. Now, I'll be honest, recently I talked about skipping Robertson, not because of his FPL credentials, but if not, just about the way of getting Salah back in. And what I mean by that is, if you have a double up in Liverpool already with Jota and Trent, and you get Robertson, it just makes it more difficult to get Salah, and you might be forced into hits, multiple transfers, or a wild card. Now, I think if you only have 1 or 2 Liverpool players in general, including Salah, then I think it's right to have Robertson. You can have Robertson and Trent and also Salah, and most people would argue that having Robertson over Jota is the right choice. But a lot of you do have a double up already, or a triple up like with Salah or Jota. Now, is it worth getting rid of one of those players to then facilitate Robertson? Probably not. But recently he's been the most informed defender in the Premier League, especially in terms of FPL. He's got 8 assists this season, which is crazy for a defender, and 1 goal. But because Trent is so good, at least FPL-wise, it kind of overshadows Robertson. But his stats are pretty decent. 5 shots inside the box, only 8 shots overall, and his XG is over 1, his XA is over 4. I think with Robertson, the main thing you're looking at is creativity. He's not going to score too often, but he can get a few goals a season. And yeah, the big chances created and key passes stats are very impressive. The fixtures are very good for Liverpool, and there could be some doubles very soon, maybe in Gameweek 26, who knows. Despite a blank in Gameweek 27, that's another thing to consider with Liverpool assets. They are going to be blanking in Gameweek 27 because of the Carabao Cup final, but you could even arguably free hit in Gameweek 27 if you do have a triple up in Liverpool. But I think unless it makes it more difficult to get Salah back in, Robertson is worth it, although you can consider other alternatives such as Laporte, and if you have Trent and Cancelo already, that is fine, and there is no right or wrong in terms of which team you double up on. I think Liverpool have the second best defence, as proven by the amount of clean sheets they've kept this season, only 2 behind Manchester City, who have kept the most, and I think Robertson is a worthwhile purchase, but he is not essential, and even though he is a nice differential, you might find better value elsewhere, but regardless, he is a buy. This may seem a little bit strange because you could arguably buy Bruno Fernandes, but a lot of people will have Ronaldo already, and with that double game week in 25 for Manchester United and Brighton, I think that if you have Bruno, you should hold him. Would I be in a rush to get him in? Probably not, because a lot of you also would not have Mohamed Salah and you're looking to bring him back in, maybe in game week 24 or 25, depending on how Egypt do in the semi-final and final of the African Cup of Nations. But Bruno Fernandes has been the best United asset in recent weeks, and his stats across the season, they're not amazing, but they have been steadily improving, and I think that Ranić has found a way to get the best out of Bruno, although we have to wait and see if this is sustainable in the long run. 7 goals and 5 assists, 45 shots overall, 19 in the box. His XG and XA are pretty healthy, 6 big chances and 10 big chances created. I like those 2 stats in particular, and he has started the vast majority of games, but yeah, he has been disappointing compared to last season, yet he is improving in the last few weeks, and I think he can continue that, but there is no guarantee that it definitely will happen, so it's more of a wait and see. With Manchester United assets, they're great holds up until game week 27. After that Watford fixture though, the fixtures are very bad, and that's when I would jump off Bruno Fernandes and these other United assets. But if you don't have Bruno already or any United asset, then I would say Bruno Fernandes is worth buying. But for those of you who have him, I'd hold. I wouldn't really be in a rush to have a triple up in Man United, because United aren't a reliable team, even though those fixtures are very good, if we're being completely honest. But Bruno Fernandes for me is a hold, and he is a worthwhile purchase up until game week 27 for those of you who don't have him or any United attack, but at the same time, it is not essential. Cucurella has featured a lot in my recent wildcard team videos and also transfer tips videos. The reason why he's a hold here is because despite that blank in 24 for Brighton, I still think Cucurella is worth holding. And if you look at the fixtures, a bit similar to United, very good up until game week 28. After that, the fixtures are very poor. There's a bad fixture swing, and that's when I would get off the Spaniard or any Brighton asset really. But at the same time, if you have some budget options like Veltman, they could always be on your bench, and you don't really have to make that a priority transfer. But Cucurella has been decent this season. His stats are very poor, for being honest. I mean, if you look at that, 1 assist, 9 shots overall, which is decent, 2 shots inside the box, but the XG and XA figures are pretty average, to be honest, very poor if anything, and he's had 0 big chances and 2 big chances created. But Cucurella is threatening. He does pass the eye test a lot, and he's got 26 key passes, and a lot of that will come from his crosses, which are pretty good, and he gets into some good positions, but for the most part, he is nothing spectacular offensively, and with him you're mainly relying on the clean sheets that Brighton do get, and then he can get some bonus points along the way. But I still think he's worth keeping, and I've got him myself, and I probably will be keeping him up until game week 28, and then I'll look to get rid of him unless I play a wild card or something else comes into the mix. But after that Newcastle fixture, that's when things turn sour. But for the meantime, I'd keep Cucurella, despite maybe some mixed fixtures along the way, also the blank in 24. But yeah, overall, you have to say the fixtures are pretty good up until game week 28, but after that, they're not that good, and that's when I'd look to sell. It is fairly disappointing that in game week 25, Southampton didn't have that double game week, which even Ralph Hasenhüttl kind of insinuated could happen, but Broja is still worth keeping. Despite those fixtures against Tottenham and Man United away, the fixtures after that are fantastic for Southampton. Now, the same goes for Livramento. If he's fit, you could actually keep him as well, and those fixtures for Southampton are fantastic. Now, just kind of a word of caution, not everything in FPL is about fixtures or the quality of the game. It's also about the form and many other factors to consider, but fixtures can lead to form, and I think Broja has been one of the best budget strikers this season. So if you're looking for a striker around 5.2 million, I think Broja is the clear winner. Dennis is still worth considering as well, but he's a bit more expensive, and Watford could do better under Roy Hodgson. But speaking about Broja, his stats across the season are decent, at least for a budget striker, but that's what he is, a budget striker. He's had 6 big chances, which is pretty decent. His XG is over 4, and he's had a good number of shots, with 20 of them being inside the box, which I like a lot. He's got 5 goals and 2 assists, so I think he can tick over nicely, and in most cases he'll probably be on your bench, but you can depend on him to get points when needed, and I think that's the main thing with Broja. And because of those fixtures, I wanted to highlight these Southampton assets like Livramento if he's fit and Broja. I think they're worth keeping, but they have shown on occasion that Southampton are capable of scoring multiple goals. So that's another thing to consider. They've got different options up front and in midfield. Ward-Prowse has been so consistent, and to be honest, as much as we tend to look at him and think, no, he's not really a good FPL asset, he definitely is a good FPL asset this season. So those three, I think, are worth keeping if you do have them. Would I be looking to buy them in? Not yet, but maybe ahead of Gameweek 26 when Southampton face Everton. So that's definitely one thing to think about. The first sell of this video is Joshua King. And if we look at his stats across the season, they're pretty decent actually, but he doesn't translate those numbers into goals. He's got 5 goals and 4 assists, which is okay. And we have to also consider he scored a hat-trick against Everton. So other than that Everton match, he's got 2 goals this season. He's got 39 shots overall with 30 inside the box. His XG is actually pretty good for a budget striker, 6.8, and his XA is almost 4. 13 big chances and 5 big chances created, but King is a wasteful finisher, and that's why I always went for Dennis instead. Now, there could be a managerial bounce with Roy Hodgson, so bear that in mind with Joshua King, but I still prefer Dennis, and I look across the board with Edouard, with Broja, and other budget strikers to choose from. I think King is worth selling. Just bear in mind there could be a reaction and King could actually improve his level, at least for a few game weeks or so. So there's always going to be a little risk if you do decide to sell him, but I still think it's worth it, and in the long run he's not going to provide the value that many people thought when they first brought him in. So for me, Joshua King is a sell. I have to say Wolves have been fantastic in recent weeks and even in the last couple of months. I think they've been one of the most consistent teams outside the top 6, and they could actually make a case for breaking into that top 6. They've been very impressive. Now, the reason why I talk about selling Raul Jimenez is because if you look at his returns and also the stats, they're nothing special. And he can get that occasional goal, which will lead to bonus points, especially if it's a narrow win for Wolves. But if we're being honest, I would rather go for the goalkeeper, Jose Sa, or some of their defenders. I look at the midfield and attack, it's just way too inconsistent, and there's so many different goal scorers, but they all get a limited number of goals, which is why they're not really worth considering. Now, if I were to go for a Wolves attacker, it would be Raul Jimenez, but I just don't think it's worth it, and there's so many different strikers to choose from, like the ones I alluded to earlier, like Edouard. There's also going to be the ones around 7 million, like Antonio, possibly Calvert-Lewin and Ollie Watkins. So for me, Raul Jimenez is a sell. He's got 4 goals and 3 assists this season. I think 2 of them might have been from penalties. 35 shots overall, 28 in the box. That's pretty decent. But an XG of less than 5 and an XA of just over 3 with 8 big chances and 3 big chances created, but just not enough FPL points or goals to really make a case for going for the Mexican. And he's also a bit of an injury doubt right now. 25 key passes. Now, I like Raul Jimenez as a player. It's very good to see him back on the pitch, and hopefully he improves because he's a quality player for Mexico and for Wolves. But if we're being honest, I think there are better choices right now, and I would look to sell Raul Jimenez. This may seem like an easy one, but for me, any Chelsea player, and that includes Marcos Alonso, is a sell. If you do have Marcos Alonso, I'd look to sell him to someone like Laporte. I think that's a very easy transfer to make, and one that I may consider doing myself, so you'll find out in my next team selection video. The stats across the board are decent, but nothing spectacular. And if you look at the next 4 fixtures, only 2 games for Chelsea against Crystal Palace and Burnley away. And to be honest, when you want to get these Chelsea players is actually game week 28, when they have some fixtures to play and they're actually very good on paper. So very simple for me. Any Chelsea assets, try to get rid of them because they just don't have enough games and it's not worth keeping them for the time being. But from game week 28, that's when you should look at getting them back in. I have to say Sterling has been pretty good this season compared at least to the last campaign, but I still think he's a skip. Now, the reason why I say that is because there's Kevin De Bruyne, Bruno Fernandes, Mohamed Salah and Heung-min Son, not to mention Harry Kane, all for the premium bracket. And I just don't think Sterling is worth occupying one of those spots. Now, up until recently, he was doing better than Kevin De Bruyne, but things have swung the other way, and I would rather go for the Belgian at this moment in time. But if you do have Sterling, I would look to hold him. But for those of you who don't have Sterling, and I've seen quite a few of you actually ask about getting Sterling in, I probably would look elsewhere. So once Son is available and all those other options I talked about for the premium price bracket, I think those are more enticing options than Raheem Sterling, who's got good stats actually. An XG of over 8, an XA of just under 4, 13 big chances and 4 big chances created. The stats are very good in my opinion, for the most part. 7 goals and 1 assist, but there is the occasional Sterling miss like against Southampton. Now, he's still a quality player and he is very important to Manchester City, but I think there's just better value elsewhere, at least for the premiums. Another player who might do very well over the next 5 to 10 game weeks is Emiliano Martinez, but the reason why I think he's a skip is because you have Luca Digne and Matty Cash in defence, who are cheaper and also might offer you better value for money, especially with the attacking threat that Luca Digne poses. And also Aston Villa haven't been that reliable of a defence this season to really make a case for going for Martinez. Last season he started at 4.5. He ended up being one of the best goalkeepers in FPL history, but I don't think it's the same thing this time round. He's a great penalty stopper. He's also just a great shot stopper in general. But you look at the stats for Aston Villa defensively, an XGC of 30, that's not good at all. Big chances conceded 38 and an expected clean sheets of 5, and Aston Villa have only kept 6 clean sheets, so they've actually slightly overperformed that despite not having that many clean sheets in the first place. So despite how good Martinez is, I just don't think it's worth going for him. He's also quite expensive, so there's just so many keepers to go for. I always talk about the same 4: David De Gea, Aaron Ramsdale, Jose Sa and Robert Sanchez. I think all 4 of those offer better value for money than Martinez and will probably keep more clean sheets. Now the last player is Marcus Rashford, and to be honest, I actually was going to include Mason Greenwood in this, but obviously since everything that's happened there, I've gone for Marcus Rashford as well. Now he has scored in back-to-back games, Marcus Rashford, but to be honest, I just don't think it's worth it going for him because he came off the bench in both instances. I don't even think he's that nailed in general. It's not like he's going to suddenly start all of the time. He has been showing a bit of form and he can be a very streaky player. He's got a double game week as well. But honestly, I think one of Bruno Fernandes or Cristiano Ronaldo is enough to cover Man United attack, and then having someone like David De Gea to cover the defence. I don't think you have to go for Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford. I think that's too many eggs in the United basket, which is quite unreliable anyways. The stats across the season are very poor, but at the same time with Marcus Rashford, his minutes have been severely limited, so you have to bear that in mind. But despite how good Rashford can be, and he's a very streaky player, and when he's confident and in full flow, he can be a very good FPL asset, but I still think he's a skip despite his good recent performances and very important goals. So that's it. We've covered 12 players to buy, hold, sell and skip. Let me know what you think of these picks. Is there any kind of differences to any of these players? Would you maybe buy Bruno Fernandes, for example? And to be honest, he is worth buying for some of you who don't have any United assets anyway. And is there any other player that you think is worth mentioning, and would they be a buy, hold, sell or skip? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Thank you for all the support. Like I said before, we're almost there at 10,000 subscribers, and thank you to the channel members. It's much appreciated. So thank you to Aranya, to Yarang, and also to Rock and Roll, who are on the captain and legend tiers. It's much appreciated. I've made some changes as well to those tiers, so check that out in the description below. And those of you who sign up for the legendary tier can have exclusive early access to all of my videos, so thank you very much. There's also going to be UCL fantasy content finally to the channel very soon, so stay tuned for that. And there's also going to be more FPL videos and live streams before the deadline, which is actually next Tuesday. So this international break, or this winter break, has been going quite quickly, but at the same time there's plenty more to go, and the same goes for the videos and live streams. So thank you very much for watching. Good luck for Game Week 24 and also the rest of Game Week 23 for any of you who have any Watford assets or anything like that, and I'll see you next time.